I'm Bill Thomas. I'm the publisher of Doubleday and, more importantly, editor of Jeffrey Toobin's wonderful book. First, I want to say thank you to all the librarians here and around the country. You do the Lord's work. And those of us at Doubleday are incredibly grateful for bringing our books to millions and millions of readers across the country. So thank you. So writers of narrative nonfiction, there's four basic tools, I think, that they need to employ whenever they write a book. They have to have dogged research skills, especially digging out primary source documents and conducting interviews with people no other journalists have been managed to find. They have to have a clean and entertaining prose style. They have to have a storytelling ability. They have to manage the way the narrative is structured so that you're just compelled to keep turning the pages. And most important, they have to have an understanding of the larger meaning of the factual events they're presenting. So the book becomes more than just an entertainment, but communicates to the reader something crucial about understanding our society. So most authors are they're strong in one of these categories, and very occasionally two. Jeff Toobin is that exceedingly rare breed. He is a writer who exceeds on all four fronts. Usually when I edit a book, my comments are fairly muted and mundane. This paragraph isn't clear, or you need more physical description here, things like that. But when I was editing Jeff's book on Patty Hearst, most of my notes came with exclamation points and underlines and were some variation of, "This is insane," and "I can't believe she did that." You are in for such a special treat when you read American Heiress. It is an astonishing story written by one of the masters of American journalism, Jeffrey Toobin.
Thanks, Bill. God, all those four categories. I never thought of that before. It sounds hard. Jeez. Hello, everyone. I am delighted to be here. Okay, so I hope some of you had the chance to watch American Crime Story, the People vs. O.J. Simpson. That was based on my book of 20 years ago, the Run of His Life. And one of the things that people always said about the O.J. story was like, well, everybody knows it, and, there's nothing new. And I think what the wonderful series showed you is that a great story is always a great story. And with all respect, even to a group of librarians for whom I have enormous respect, you don't know all that you think you know. And you certainly don't know all that you think you know about the Patty Hearst story. And what I thought I'd do today is just tell you a little about the chronology of what happened, because it is really an extraordinary story, and this is just the beginning. Patty Hearst is kidnapped on February 4th, 1974, from her home, which she shares with her loser boyfriend, Stephen Weed. And she is grabbed by 8 terrorists who they called themselves the Symbionese Liberation Army. Customarily, armies have more than 8 people in them. But the Symbionese Liberation Army had a total of 8 people, 5 women and 3 men, 7 whites, and 1 African American, Donald DeFreeze, better known as General Field Marshal Sinque. Now, she's kidnapped on February 4th and taken to a closet, famous closet, in a rugged suburb of San Francisco called Daly City. She's kept there, and gradually her kidnappers, they start speaking to her, they start asking her questions, listening to her, and one thing leads to another, and by the end of March, she decides, or she says, she is joining up. And she is given the name, as I'm sure you perhaps remember, Tanya, which was Che Guevara's girlfriend, and she joins in, and she announces that she, in a communique, that she's going to stay and fight. And on April 15th, the SLA has selected a bank in San Francisco, and the reason they selected this particular bank in the Sunset section of San Francisco is that it had a relatively modern technology for the time, which was a security camera. And they placed Patricia Hearst in a place within the bank that they knew was exactly where the camera was focused. So they wanted to show off their prize recruit, and that was April 15th. and it caused a sensation, this broad daylight robbery, and the heat really started to come on the SLA. The FBI, in one of the most extraordinarily incompetent manhunts in history, couldn't find these 8 people who were sending communique after communique. All their identities were known, but their location was not. So, okay, the bank robbery is April 15th. They decide that the heat gets too intense on with the San Francisco cops, so they decide to go to DeFreeze's hometown of Los Angeles, and they set up shop there in early May, and they rent a shabby house. And on May 16th, two of the kidnappers and Patricia decide they can't stand it anymore. They want to go shopping just to get out of the house where they claustrophobically been kept there. So they Bill and Emily Heiress, the unhappily married couple who were part of the Symbionese Liberation Army, and Patricia decide to go shopping, and they go buy some groceries, and they go. They buy some magazines, and then they go to a place called Mel's Sporting Goods, which is a sporting goods store, and Bill and Emily Heiress go in, and Patricia is left in the van by herself with the key in the ignition. And she's just sitting there reading an afternoon paper, and she's waiting for Bill and Emily to complete their shopping trip so they could go back together. So Patricia is waiting there, and she's looking out across the street, and she sees something that she doesn't expect, because Bill Heiress, in his genius, he buys socks, he buys sweaters, but he decides to shoplift a bandolier, which is the thing that holds bullets, and it just so happens that the clerk at the store is an aspiring police officer, and he sees Bill Heiress shoplift the bandolier, but he knows that under California law, shoplifting is not a crime until you actually leave the premises. So he's watching Bill, and he's watching Bill, and he leaves. Bill leaves, and this young man, Anthony Shepard, once he goes outside, he says, "Are you going to pay for that?" And he winds up tackling Bill Heiress, and Emily Heiress piles in, and the manager of the store piles in. So there is this huge scrum in front of Mel's Sporting Goods. So what does Patricia Hearst do in the van across the street with the key in the ignition? Well, she sees this fight. So she says, "I know what I'll do. I'll take one of the machine guns in the back of the van and spray the entire front of the store so Bill and Emily can escape." So she grabs the machine gun from the back of the van, sprays wildly all over this busy street in Los Angeles. Having shot 30 bullets in a magazine, she reflects on what she has done and gets a different weapon and shoots some more bullets across the street, which succeeds in persuading Anthony Shepard that it's really not worth it over this bandolier to get killed. So he lets Bill and Emily Heiress. They let Bill and Heiress run across the street into the van. At that point, they have attracted some attention, and they realize they can't go back to where the 6 other kidnappers are. They wind up going on a surreal venture where they kidnap a guy, steal his car, they steal another car, and they wind up going to a drive-in movie where they watch The New Centurions over and over again, and they wait. And they try to figure out what to do to reconnect with their 6 comrades. Well, what they decide to do is they realize the heat is too intense, so Emily Heiress had a summer job at Disneyland. So they go to a motel across the street from Disneyland to wait it out, and they turn on the television, and what do they see? they find that the Los Angeles Police Department has surrounded their comrades in a shabby house in Los Angeles. And it is just after there's a new invention in the modern media world, something called a minicam. And it is the first live broadcast of a news event in American history that is not a pre-scheduled event like a ball game or a political convention. And the signal gets picked up across the country. And what Bill and Emily Heiress see with Patricia Hearst in this hotel across the street from Disneyland is, to this day, the biggest gun battle in American history involving the police. 5,000 rounds of ammunition go into this little house. 3,000 rounds of ammunition come out from the SLA. Eventually, the police put in essentially a kind of explosive tear gas, which sets the building on fire. And all 6 of the SLA members are killed. Bill and Emily Heiress watch this on TV, and then they set off on what's known as Patty's Lost Year, because she's not caught for another 13 months. And to find out what happens in those 13 months, you're going to have to read the book. So anyway, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being librarians, and I enjoy the rest of the afternoon.